Gang, what is up? We are back with another episode of Hockey Town Hangout. The Wings might be the best team in the National Hockey League right now. We're going to break down the current state of affairs right now.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. Hockey Town Hangout.
Brings it in, scores! Oh, his first NHL goal is a beauty!
The sickest Detroit Red Wings podcast. It's gonna be sick.
So, Forrest, the Red Wings just won their first 4 consecutive game road trip for the first time since 1996. 29 years, 3 games in overtime or shootout. How are Red Wings fans feeling about their team right now?
I mean, they should all be excited, right? I mean, as low as we got here this season, to be sitting here right now, I'm still kind of surprised. Like, it's just over 2 months has changed so much, so fast, and every single change has been for the good. Apologies for interrupting you at the beginning.
My bad.
I was gonna make a point that Lightning up 1-0 on the Senators right now. That's actually a massive game tonight too for us. Hoping that that game can be decided in regulation, so one of the teams can strike out and get no points. So like just a lot of teams very close. The Atlantic is very much so wide open. You've got the older teams, Tampa with superstars up top and no depth. Same for Boston. And then you've got more of the young and gun up and coming teams, the Wings, the Senators. Also, the Montreal Canadiens have been a surprise recently. So things are wide open and everybody should be excited, but it's just the start. Like the Wings have the hardest schedule the rest of the way. Like by far, and so many divisional matchups in there. Like they still have to fight for every point for the rest of the season just because of how close it is. And yeah, they have some games in hand against other teams, but you still got to win those games. So interested to see how things go. Just wild that the Wings have been such a wagon, the different versatile ways that they've won recently. That's what the great teams do. You're wearing that, like you're wearing a Lion sweatshirt tonight. Like that's what Dan Campbell says all the great teams do. They can win any one of multiple different ways. And this Wings team is starting to show you that, hey, we can win multiple different ways. And that is very reminiscent of a lot of the great teams we've seen roll through here. With the schedule, I don't know if, they're going to wind up in a playoff spot at the end of the season. But regardless, I think this second half and how vastly different it's been is a positive building block for a lot of the youngsters on our roster going forward. What about you, Matt?
Yeah, I'm really impressed with like how they've won all these games in a row, like especially going out west they were out there for like 5 or 6 days. It was for a minute. And, the back-to-back in Calgary and Vancouver, the fact that you needed extra time for 3 of the 4 wins, like just like the level of resilience that takes, like this team did not have, just a few months ago. So just really impressed with how they played. And, every game was pretty tight. And, they bent and they didn't break. Really, really, really liking the energy and the secondary offense some of these kids are bringing. I have loved Soderblom there on the third line these past several games. I think he, was a guy, he started the year in Detroit 2 or 3 years ago, whenever it was, and then kind of got buried in GR for a little bit and had to work on his game. And man, he's come back. He's been super noticeable almost every shift he's out there. And Albert Johansson, dude, like it's so funny because like at the beginning of the year, everyone's like, oh, tamper your expectations. Like he's probably not going to play a bunch and blah, blah, blah. And that turned out to be the case for the first, 30 some odd games of the year. But Todd McClellan comes in, starts giving him a little bit of a chance. And, unfortunate for Jeff Petrie to have to go down and miss some time. But obviously that's another common thing that great teams have. It's that next man up mentality. And, I think they were doing a piece on FanDuel Sports Network. Trent Yawney put them together, and like he's put together like Keith and Seabrook and another pair out in Anaheim. And so obviously they played together in Grand Rapids. I think they look really, really good together on the second pair. I think you've seen that benefit up and down the lineup just because you're not trying to ride the top D pair into the ground with all the matchups. So that takes some pressure off, Moritz Seider, which is nice. And, some of the goaltending on the trip's been really, really good. That's something that we're going to have, continued down the stretch. But yeah, I'm really, really impressed with where they're at, through 20. I mean, obviously we were all hoping for, the new coach bump that everyone is, saying, but I mean, to be 15-4-1 through your first 20 games, I mean, that's just 2 7-game win streaks. I mean, some teams go a whole year without 1 7-game win streak. We got, 2 in the last 6 or 7 weeks, which has been crazy. So I'm kind of in disbelief with what I'm seeing. And it feels really good right now. I honestly, like, they probably wish this Four Nations break wasn't coming right now because they probably want to keep playing and stay hot. But hopefully they can finish it off here. A Saturday matinee game against the Lightning, that'd be a big win. I think you kind of alluded to it. If Ottawa loses tonight, I think they have one more, and we beat Tampa on Sunday, we would head to the break in Atlantic 3, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So that would be really, really awesome. So just the fact that we're even having these conversations is just kind of nuts. So yeah, good vibes in Hockey Town through the roof for sure.
Definitely good vibes. You can see that everybody's collective is the weight has just been lifted off of everybody's shoulders. They're finally playing hockey again, and it just seems like they're having fun out there. Like especially all these wins and Patty Kane winning in shootouts, going top titty like that. That's rock star shit, and you just absolutely love to see it. You mentioned Johansson. I mean, he's 24. We've barely gotten to see him. Maybe not a hot take that I have, but I wouldn't mind seeing him on the top pairing. I mean, a 24-year-old defenseman going to be a free agent at the end of the year. We know Ben Sherratt's not the answer on your first pairing, so why not try out Albert Johansson up there? I mean, he's already his coming out party has really been this West Coast road trip, the breakup against McDavid, he's here and he's here to stay, and he's going to be a top 4 pairing defenseman for a long time. He's established that he can play on the second pairing. Nobody's going to dispute him on that. Can he be a first pairing guy? The only reason that I say that is because with ASP coming over, and yeah, he'll need a year. It's way easier to fill a second pairing defenseman than it is to fill a top pairing defenseman. So if you can get Johansson, especially because McClellan won't play Seider and Edvinsson together, you can get Johansson on that top pairing. It's way easier for ASP to slot in, or for you to make a signing for 1 year to take over that spot and then get it to ASP. So, just very excited with him. It's amazing what happens when you give young kids a chance. You're seeing it all over how fast kids are developing these days. And Casper's only 20 himself. Been the one takeaway I have is all these guys that play against fully grown men when they're drafted. Seider, Raymond, Puchelnikov, I think, is going to be another example. Casper's there. ASP is going to be in that same boat. Just playing against men, being ready out of the box, basically giving them one year, half a season to season in Grand Rapids, get used to the ice sheet, and then let the dogs go. It's time to bring up the reinforcements and kick this baby into overdrive. The time is now. Time is now.
I think also too, the Wings are super, super well positioned with the salary cap and the projections that it's going up to north of $110 million. I think 113.5 or whatever. And some other people have talked about this, but Larkin, Raymond, Seider, all locked up. I think they're all locked up for around 25 million, the three of them put together. You're going to have so much cap to play around with. And so I think this is a really exciting time. And I think, to your point too, this is a good time to kick it into overdrive and get some more ELCs on this deal, or on this roster, so that, hey, maybe we could throw a guy like Mikko Rantanen some money. Maybe we could throw a guy like Mitch Marner some money, and then you'd have a situation where your first line could be Larkin, Raymond, and Mitch Marner, or Mikko Rantanen, or, what's going on in Vancouver, is Quinn Hughes, someone like that, going to be available in a while? Like, there's just it's you could go so many different ways. No one knows what they're talking about inside the Wings building, but it's really exciting to think about the flexibility that they've actually given themselves. And I know we complain about, guys like Cop Comfer or Sherratt, the replaceables, but they're not going to be around forever. They're all expiring in the next, year or two or whatever. So I think Comfer might be the longest one, maybe like 3 years left. But, we're looking at, probably trying to have a cup window sometime in the next 3 to 5 years, I would guess, just based on how many kids are coming in and how they're looking and what's still left to go. So obviously competing for playoff spots now, you'd hope after, maybe getting the playoffs 3, 4, 5 times in a row, maybe then it's time to start pushing. But obviously this is all speculation. I think it's just really exciting that we're even having these conversations just because everything has been so doom and gloom for a long time. And like the way that this season started after the way last season ended, like it just felt like purgatory for a period of time. And then the gift that keeps on giving, the Christmas gift we got one day late, Todd McClellan, like, man, he has these guys absolutely feeling themselves. Doesn't seem like I will say Tarasenko does look like, I don't know if anybody can help this guy, but it seems like everybody else on the roster is kind of taking a step, which is really exciting to see because that's what you're going to need going down the stretch. And also to Marco Kasper, like we talk about the draft being so important. And we also talk about how Detroit's gotten like no lottery luck, but like the 19 draft in a redraft, Sider's probably going earlier than 6. 2020 draft, Raymond's probably 1 or 2, depending on who you talk to. 2021, Simon Edmondson might end up being a top 3 pick in that draft. And Marco Kasper being at 8, he's looking like he might be higher up in that redraft. So I know it's been kind of tough not getting these, top 3 picks, but if every guy you're drafting is probably going higher and you're drafting in the top 10 all the time, then you're doing something right. So kudos to the amateur scouting staff with the Red Wings right now and what they've been doing the last 5 or 6 years in the draft. Pro scouting got to get on their level a little bit. Seemingly pro scouting, I don't know, maybe going on too many coffee runs or whatever they're doing, but amateur scouting's really been killing it. And I think they're seeing the fruits of that right now.
You mentioned Cop. I feel like he's been one of the most improved players since Todd McClellan took over. Like, wow, just hit him on that second line, embracing being the dirty work guy. It's worked, and it's worked beautifully. And truthfully, between that and the third line of Rass, Soderblom, and Berggren, those two I feel like have really been the driving force over the second 7-game winning streak. Soderblom, I'm pretty sure he's on like a five-game point streak, and just the way that he's gelled with Rass in such a quick amount of time. And obviously he played with Berggren down in the AHL, so he has familiarity with that too. Like the mix of Berggren with those two guys, with him being such a playmaker and pass first guy, I think is perfect. Just the whole setup of the line. I really think they've struck lightning with that. And for them to be where they're at, that line has really been massive. Especially like Cop and in between DeBrincat and Kane, like I can't even believe I find myself saying this, but he's just been stuffing the score sheet recently, getting a lot of secondary assists, and I've just walked away super impressed. Like it's exciting and we're moving in the right direction, but there's still a massive hill to climb. As I mentioned earlier, they do have the toughest schedule left in the NHL. They have an opportunity, obviously, to be in a top 3 spot in the Atlantic if things roll their way here the last week of the season. But a lot of tough games on the horizon. They definitely are going to need this 12-day break or whatever it is to rest up before going forwards and circle the wagons to go forward.
So obviously the one game left before the break, and then they're off until like the 22nd or 23rd or whatever it is. And then trade deadlines a few weeks after that, right?
Yes, I think it's early March. But it's interesting because they've been saying that like this is the first trade deadline, air quotes, just because there's such a long break and stuff. I've been interested that I've been hearing people call it that just because you really haven't heard of anything yet. I mean, obviously there's been a little bit of movement here, but just interesting how the Four Nations face-off has kind of changed the complexion and maybe rock the boat a little bit on how the normal process works in the NHL.
So it'll be really interesting to see kind of what their philosophy is at the trade deadline, because I'm not really sure like you really need to spend a bunch and bring anything in, especially because it seems like right now you have like it figured out on the second D pair right now. Um, I feel like that's something you could probably wait to address in the off season, right? Like there's no really need to spend any futures on that. You'd like more depth scoring, sure, but like what if the kids are, keep depth scoring, like you said, Elmer Soderblom on a 5-game point streak, like if he can, be a half to 1 point a game guy, like he's not going to be a point a game, but like continue to get like point streaks here and there and still be an effective player. Like Marco Casper still chipping in. Maybe Carter Mazer comes up for a little bit in March. We'll never know. We'll see. But I don't know if they really need to do a ton, and might be a boring trade deadline. If I had to guess right now, what my gut's telling me, I think they probably are a team that stands pat unless maybe an injury occurs. Then maybe that would reconsider what they do. But just feels to me like things are going really well. Like you've had these win streaks, like you're vibing with the new coach, like everything feels good. The spirit has been lifted, to use his own phrasing. I don't know if you need to do much.
I agree with that. I think just with how well everything's clicked recently and the young guys that have been brought in, I just don't think bringing in another veteran to block a spot is conductive to what we're doing here. We've finally embraced as the Red Wings playing young kids. I just think that's so counterproductive. And maybe if they were in a better, higher position at this time, I'd say, yeah, sure, push the chips in. But, they're in good cap standing for the next couple seasons. There's a lot of money coming off the books. And to make a move, I just don't know that you do that, especially with the good vibes that have been around the team recently. I think if anything, that would take away more so than it would add to the team at this stage. Just because, like, you can tell that something's changed with them. Everybody's, as I mentioned earlier, everybody's having fun. You can see it with the way that they're playing hockey. They're not gripping the stick and white knuckling it like they were before.
Yeah, for sure.
This game on Saturday in Tampa is going to be very massive. I think that's going to be a real tone-setting game here. If they can, because they always play Tampa very closely, in interdivision opponent. It's going to be a close game. If they can come out of that game with a win, I think it's going to be a sign of better things to come, and showing that maybe the Wings will elbow their way into a true playoff spot and not be just a wild card team this year. Really put the Atlantic on notice.
That would be really nice. I think they're playing with, like, obviously we had like some hot stretches last year, but I don't know, like the way we're doing it feels different. I don't, for lack of a better way to describe it, like we've got offense coming from kind of all over the place, not just relying kind of on our power play and like a couple guys. And it feels to me like they're kind of like more honest wins. Like all these wins in Canada and in Seattle, like those are hardworking, resilient wins under like, stressful bodily circumstances, short rest, lots of travel, like, and to do that, I mean, obviously, there have been a lot of really good Red Wings teams between 1996 and 2025. And the fact that none of them were able to go on a 4-game road trip and win 4 in a row is insane to me. Like, and I know I put out a tweet last night, like through X number of games, the 18-19 Blues and the 24-25 Red Wings had the same record. I actually checked before we hopped on here, and we're actually 1 win ahead of them through 54 games as they were. And I'm not going to sit here and pretend like I think they're going to go on a Stanley Cup run, but I think we need to really appreciate what we're in the middle of witnessing. Cause like, obviously we kind of saw it with the Tigers too, with how far out of it they were, and they were able to come back and make some noise in the playoffs. And I think if the Red Wings were able to replicate that, I think between that and the Tigers, the Pistons are sitting in a playoff spot right now. Obviously the Lions are going to come back hungry and hopefully better. Just what a time to be a Detroit sports fan right now. And we haven't really even like struck oil yet. We're still kind of drilling a little bit. We're trying to shed that last little bit of ick before we can, cash the checks, but it's just really exciting right now. And I'm really interested to see how they play down the stretch, because if they can stay healthy and they stay this dialed in, like I think the ball's in their court from here on out. It's obviously they're not going to win 8 out of 10 the rest of the year or whatever it is, but you're in a good spot now. If you can just play really competitive hockey and get points more often than not, I think you're in a really good spot to snap this playoff drought.
They really put themselves in position to do it over the last month and a half, and yeah, excitement is the word that should be used to describe where we stand right now, and the opportunity to even be talking about being the third seed in the Atlantic here on early February. It's just wild. And hey, times are good. Let's keep rolling with it. Yeah, the vibes are strong.
So let's take a look at the schedule real quick and see what we have to look forward to here. And then I also want to look up the exact date of the trade deadline just so we know that as well.
So upcoming schedule, obviously we mentioned this upcoming Saturday, February 8th, home against Tampa Bay. I'm pretty sure that one's on ABC as well. I remember seeing a commercial for that. So everybody can get access to it, which is nice. Obviously, Four Nations break. It looks like it's 13 days there. Then they come back and have two quick home games back to back, Minnesota and Anaheim. Then going out to Minnesota and playing a road game, and then back home for Columbus. So, I mean, definitely going to be tough with a back to back, but that's probably the time you want to play a back to back is after a 13 game layoff. So, really nice to kind of see that, and hopefully they can hit the ground running, because I think that where Columbus stands, that should be a win. Obviously, the Ducks are ducking it up. So I think those two should be wins. But hey, if you can split against Minnesota, or even just take them to overtime twice, it's closing to a successful month.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. I think those are good points. Also, the trade deadline on Friday, March 7th. So about a month from right now is when that'll take place. So it sounds like the Red Wings have, 5 to 10 games between now and then. Hopefully they're still in a good spot. It'd be interesting to see what everyone else kind of does, because obviously all the teams, salary cap's going up for everybody. So it'll be interesting to see if perhaps, all that money coming in for the teams, maybe it'll be a more aggressive trade deadline than we're used to. It'll be interesting to see. I don't think anyone expected to see Mikko Rantanen get traded. Like, that was insane. And then obviously Vancouver, Elias Pettersson, JT Miller, will they, won't they? All that kind of ended. JT Miller goes back to New York and just starts burying goals right away. It's kind of funny. But yeah, everything in the East super tight. Like, nothing's a guarantee by any means. Like, when you're in dead last, you can say, oh, we're, 2 good weeks away from being back in it. Well, when you're at the top of the wild card trying to get in that division, like, you're 1 bad week away from looking up again. So it's really important that they, the players on the team who aren't at Four Nations, hopefully they're getting some much needed R&R, and they can get ready to go for probably the last 25, 30 games here. So it's going to be exciting down the stretch. You're definitely not going to want to miss the action. I know at the beginning of the year, I think I said like 86, 88 points. What did you say, Forrest?
I think I was a little bit lower. I think I was like 84.
Well, they might be at 63 at Four Nations, which would be kind of insane considering they had like 30 points at Christmas. Oh, man. Forrest, anything else you would like to add here before we sign off for the evening?
I think they're ahead of both of our paces. So glad that they're laughing at us and gonna blow our projections out of the water, and can't wait to see how far they make us look like terrible at predicting things.
I'll be so okay with being wrong in this scenario. I know you would too. Don't miss the game on Saturday. It's a big one. Tampa, Detroit, always a close competitive game. And then we're going to be watching Four Nations too. Forrest, any predictions on that real quick?
I'm taking the Americans. They won the World Juniors, and I think they're going to continue by winning the Four Nations. I know that's not a sexy pick. That I think they're probably the quote unquote favorites, but I think head and shoulders and 4 times better than any other tournament team they've ever iced outside of, I'd say, probably the 02 Olympics. And I'd probably take this team over that 02 Olympics team. So I'll take the Americans.
It's definitely going to be a really good tournament. I'm good with the Americans or the Swedes. I would just like to see Larks or Raymond win something really cool and build their confidence even further. So in a perfect world, it's Sweden USA Championship and everyone's happy. So it's going to be great hockey nonetheless. All right, Hockey Town. One more game, a couple weeks off, and then it's a sprint to the end of the year. Hopefully the Red Wings can maybe sneak into that Atlantic Division seeding, take a little pressure off themselves, keep this hot streak going. So we'll see. We're going to watch with high anticipation. Very excited for how things going right now. Thank you for joining us. Follow us on Twitter at Red Wing Diehards. We'll see you next time.
Thanks for hanging out, Hockey.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast Hockey Town Hangout on YouTube, Facebook, Google Play, and Apple Podcasts.